Imagine being told that the PGA Tour you grew up watching could look completely different in just a couple of years. Not a small adjustment. Not another minor points change. We are talking about a postseason that could be redesigned, formats that could change, and a new competitive structure that could reshape how the biggest stars decide where and when they play. And now, according to reports and growing discussion around the tour, resistance is beginning to build. 11 prominent players are being linked to a growing pushback against Brian Rolapp's vision. And if that opposition becomes organized, this could turn into one of the biggest internal battles professional golf has seen in years. The question is not simply whether the players like the new plan. The real question is whether the PGA Tour can convince its biggest names that these changes will actually make golf better. Stay with me because the details behind this fight could change the future of the sport. Brian Rolapp did not arrive at the PGA Tour promising to simply maintain the status quo. From the beginning, his message has been centered around transformation. He has talked about creating a more compelling product, making events more meaningful, improving the fan experience, and building a structure that can compete in an increasingly crowded sports entertainment world. His vision includes major changes to the schedule, a two-tier competitive structure, promotion and relegation concepts, and a postseason that could potentially look very different from what fans know today. The tour has already announced that a new competitive model is planned for the 2028 season, including championship and challenger series concepts. On paper, that sounds exciting. More meaningful tournaments, bigger fields, greater stakes, more opportunities for emerging players. A postseason designed to create genuine drama instead of simply repeating the same stroke play formula. But professional golfers do not look at these changes the same way a fan does. For the players, the schedule is not just entertainment. It determines travel, preparation, recovery, ranking opportunities, sponsorship obligations, family time, and ultimately their careers. That is where the tension begins. The idea of changing the postseason has become particularly sensitive because the FedEx Cup playoffs already carry enormous importance. The current postseason is supposed to be the grand finale of the PGA Tour season, but even within the golf world there has been debate about whether the existing format creates enough drama. Recent criticism has focused on whether the playoff structure feels too long, too predictable, or simply not different enough from a normal tournament. Matt Fitzpatrick, for example, recently questioned whether golf even needs a playoff system in the traditional American sports sense, arguing that season-long consistency should carry more weight. And that criticism is important because it shows something bigger is happening. The debate is no longer simply about one tournament or one player. People are questioning what the postseason should actually mean. Rolapp has reportedly considered ideas that could make the final stages of the season more dramatic, including different formats and potentially match play. His broader competitive vision also emphasizes stronger fields and a more structured hierarchy across the tour. For fans, match play sounds fantastic. Imagine the world's best players going head-to-head with everything on the line. One bad hole could eliminate a superstar. One unbelievable comeback could completely change the championship picture. That is exactly the kind of drama modern sports executives love. But the players have another perspective. A golfer spends an entire season accumulating points, managing their body, traveling around the world, and trying to peak for major championships. If the postseason suddenly introduces a dramatically different format, some players may wonder whether the season-long system is being undermined. If you dominate for 8 months, should your reward be a massive reset when the playoffs begin? Or should your advantage become even more valuable? That question could become one of the central arguments in the battle over Rolapp's plan. And then there is another issue that cannot be ignored: player control. The modern professional golfer has more choices than ever before. LIV Golf changed the economics of the sport by proving that elite players could demand enormous financial commitments and greater control over their schedules. Even though LIV itself is now facing major uncertainty, including the cancellation of its 2026 team championship in Michigan and a transition toward new investment, its impact on professional golf is undeniable. That means PGA Tour leadership cannot simply tell players what the future will look like and expect everyone to accept it. The stars have leverage. They know the tour needs them. Television networks need recognizable names. Sponsors need recognizable names. Fans buy tickets to see recognizable names. And when a superstar chooses not to play, the impact can be felt immediately. Rory McIlroy's recent decision to play in the opening FedEx Cup playoff event is a perfect example. McIlroy had skipped the event the previous year, but returned in 2026 after conversations that included Brian Rolapp. McIlroy himself emphasized the importance of top players participating and supporting the tour. That detail matters because it demonstrates the relationship Rolapp is trying to build with the biggest names. But convincing players to participate is one thing. Convincing them to accept a completely redesigned postseason is another. Now imagine a group of 11 prominent players becoming increasingly vocal about the direction of the tour. Even if the exact details of any coordinated revolt remain fluid, the underlying issue is very real. How much influence should the players have over the structure of professional golf? And this is where the story becomes much bigger than Brian Rolapp. It becomes a battle over the identity of the PGA Tour. One side sees professional golf as a sport that desperately needs modernization. The traditional schedule has become difficult for casual fans to follow. Too many tournaments can feel disconnected from each other. The best players do not always compete against each other often enough. Younger fans have different entertainment expectations, and LIV demonstrated that alternative formats, team concepts, guaranteed money, and spectacle can attract enormous attention. Rolapp supporters can therefore argue that standing still would be dangerous. If golf wants to compete with football, basketball, baseball, and other major sports for attention, the PGA Tour cannot rely entirely on tradition. But the opposing argument is equally powerful. Golf is not football. It is not basketball. And trying to copy other sports could destroy what makes golf special. That concern is particularly relevant when talking about playoffs and match play. Golf has traditionally rewarded individual performance over an entire tournament and, historically, over an entire season. Turning the postseason into something heavily dependent on elimination, head-to-head competition, or dramatic short format results could create television excitement. But it could also create an uncomfortable sense that a player's entire season is being decided by a few days. That is exactly why the player's reaction matters so much. The tour can create the most exciting format imaginable, but if the biggest stars do not want it, and that is what makes this situation so fascinating. If these 11 players really do become a unified voice against parts of Rolapp's postseason vision, the next few months could become extremely important. Will other stars join them? Will the tour modify the plan? Will the players get more representation? Or will Rolapp decide that the future of golf requires taking risks that some players simply do not like? Those questions remain open. What we do know is that the PGA Tour is already moving toward a major structural transformation, and the debate over the postseason is happening at exactly the wrong time for anyone hoping to avoid controversy. The tour wants more excitement. The players want fairness and control. The fans want the biggest names competing when it matters most. And Brian Rolapp is standing directly in the middle of all three demands. That is why the story is bigger than 11 players. It is about the future identity of the PGA Tour. Will the next era of golf be built around tradition or entertainment? Will the postseason reward the best player over the entire year, or the player who peaks at the perfect moment? Will the stars embrace the new system, or will they force leadership back to the negotiating table? Those answers are coming. And if the reported player resistance continues to grow, this could become one of the most important power struggles in professional golf since the emergence of LIV. So before you leave, tell me what you think. Should Brian Rolapp continue with his aggressive postseason vision? Or should the PGA Tour listen more closely to its biggest stars before changing the game they built their careers around? Because whatever happens next, one thing is becoming increasingly clear. The future of professional golf is no longer being decided quietly behind closed doors. The players are watching, the fans are watching, and the entire golf